Welcome to Enabling Buying in a World of Selling. This is a podcast with leaders, thought leaders in my world, and what enabling buying in a world of selling means in their world. If you're curious about the idea behind all of this, check out my book, Enabling Buying in a World of Selling, at enablingbuying.com, where you're actually able to listen to some chapters and pre-order the book today. Let's get into it. Super excited to introduce Megan Gilason, who
Gilason, yeah.
Gilason. Yeah, I always get it wrong. I say Gilason, but I'm sorry, it's Gilason.
It's fine. It happens all the time.
Really? Does it really happen all the time?
Yeah.
So Megan and I go back quite a ways. I would say it's more than 5 years at least. And
Yes.
you're someone who's very thoughtful. I'll let you introduce yourself, but I'm just going to tease anyone listening that you're VP and regional head of Agile for a very large organization worldwide. I won't spoil it. I'll let you name the organization. But I will say, every time I meet with you, Megan, I learn from you, and I I'm thrilled that we're going to have this opportunity to talk about your take on Agile, because it's something you've talked to me a lot about. And I've only ever thought of Agile as something in the systems, coding, software world. And you've said, no,
Right.
actually, there's a lot more than that. And so see if we can see where our interests meet when we talk about enabling buying in a world of selling and Agile. So why don't you take it from here? Tell us a little bit about
Sure.
you and why you're interested in this topic besides being on our board at Calabria.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for the introduction. I actually spent a good 25 years of my career on the learning side of human resources. So I've had probably every job responsibility that comes under learning and professional development and leadership development. And I was ready to spend the rest of my career in that nice, comfortable space. And then recently, with the organization for which I work, which is Allianz Trade, there was an opportunity to step into the world of Agile as an Agile coach. Now, I didn't know what that was. I knew of executive coaching, and I was looking into that at the time. But Agile coaching is all about supporting people who are moving from a more traditional way of working to this agile way of working, which is a concept of breaking apart silos and bringing together the different business areas that will support the outcomes necessary for a customer. So I do have that responsibility as an Agile coach for the Americas region, which is Canada and Brazil, as well as the United States for Allianz Trade. But there are several of us across the globe that are supporting this throughout our organization. So that is where I am now and what I do. And something that comes up with Agile a lot, there's this notion of doing Agile versus being Agile, because having this way of working really is a behavior. And we talk about values and being very values driven, which is what the Agile way of working is. I use the example in classes that one of my values is teaching. I am someone who consistently teaches, and so it means a lot to me that you just introduced me as a person who teaches you every time we're together, because that is how I like to show up. So I'm happy to have this conversation and help you understand this world of Agile when it comes to collaboration, which is, I know, a value of Clavia as well.
So right away, I think I found one very strong dovetail where we align, and that is breaking down silos. Because in our world, enabling buying is all about collaboration. So it's not just sales and marketing that take on the lion's share of revenue generation. It's the entire organization working together for the buyer. So tell us more about this idea of breaking down silos, because I'm sure you wouldn't be offended, but I hear a lot of people say that. And I want your take on what that means. Like, because, people throw that term around a lot. And then when you get a guy like me and a person like you who really digs in on what does that actually mean, breaking down silos? Am I walking in with a bulldozer and crashing into people's offices? What does that actually mean? So tell us a
Sure.
little bit about how that works in your organization.
Yeah. Well, when it comes to breaking down silos, if you think of the traditional corporate environment, we have that traditional triangle, right? You have the people at the top, the tone from the top down, whatever you want to call it, where strategy is typically coming from the top down. It goes through several different areas, the front office areas, the back office areas, the employment areas, whatever you have in your organization. The strategy comes down, it's translated into something that works for that area. And then as an individual contributor, more often than not, you're given your goals for the year. And your goals are within your area of expertise, right? However, there are so many things that are shared. And within those shared responsibilities, what the silo is when we hear things like, well, that's not my job. It's where people do their part within the process, but they don't truly work with people who do the other parts, or they don't interact. Maybe there's misunderstanding of who is doing what. And in the worst case scenario, those areas would have competing goals for those individuals, right? So a competing goal could be, revenue versus an expense ratio, right? And so there's this constant conflict that can happen within those silos. What happens when agile ways of working come in, because let's remember too, Charles, agile is meant to solve problems. It's not something that you just come in and say, oh, let's become agile. It's when you realize as a business owner that you have a problem, that there are multiple steps within processes. So even in the sales process, there's multiple people involved, multiple areas involved. And if they're not interacting with each other within the process, how strong is the process, right? And so when agile comes in, if we realize these people are not interacting, they're not working with each other, they are communicating through systems and not through voices, the output is just not that strong. If we find those problems, an agile way of working could be a solution. What happens in that solution is we take one person from each of those areas and we put them into a working team. We
Mm.
give that team goals that they are working together to achieve. And now they're no longer working against each other, but now they're working with the parameters that they each have in order to make that end result happen, which would be a sale, it would be a renewal, something like that. So that's what we mean by breaking down the silos. The strategy still exists. Every person is still doing the job that they were hired to do and that they are the expert in doing. It's just rather than being behind a wall, or more often than not behind a screen, and not interacting and asking questions and working to help each other out. That's essentially what we mean by breaking down the silo. Is let's break down those areas and give everyone a focus that they're all working together to do.
So if
So
we
that's what I
apply,
mean. Go ahead.
got got it. So that's very helpful because again, our organization's working at scale. So we're working with companies, organizations, enterprises like yours, where it's not like the founder's sitting in the room and the company can pivot on the words that he or she just said, and tomorrow we're going to implement something. When you're at scale, a lot of the time, I call it's mandate by memo, right? And I loved how you described the pyramid because there are so many layers. How do you, it's like playing telephone. You start with a message at the top and then it's got to filter down. And how is that getting translated, et cetera? So I get the concept of team. I get the concept of breaking down silos. How is in the world of agile that is that measured in any way? Is there any level of accountability attached to that format? Like, how does that work?
It could be. Our favorite answer for anything, whenever we're asked a question as an agile coach, our favorite answer is, well, it depends. It depends on the situations. It depends on the business. As a business grows, the biggest challenge that happens is communication starts to get muddled. And this is really why Agile coaches exist, is because the transition of moving from that traditional sense of top down, that communication area. Well, now there's no longer really that top down. Now there's the top that comes across to different areas. So within Agile, it's a very disciplined approach. I have a very close friend who has been working in Agile for a long time in a technology company. And what he tells me is it looks complicated to get something done that's very simple. But what happens and what we have to support people through is that kind of transition where there is no longer a hierarchy of communication. That what Agile starts to do is it starts to streamline communication so it can get to these working squads faster. You mentioned something earlier about knowing Agile as part of a technology piece, and that is where it started. You can look up the history of it to know about the retreat that happened, I believe, in Utah. But it was really designed by a group of programmers within the world of technology and coding. And so that's where a lot of people know Agile to be. What we use it for, because obviously I don't work for a technology company, what we use it for is in our products. So where our goals come into play, the goals are really directly aligned to the individual goals of the area, but combined so that they're shared, right? So we might not be, in our approach, we're not measuring communication. However, there are some things that we measure that would involve communication, right? So it really depends on what it is that you're trying to solve as far as that problem. And if Agile is the best way to solve that problem, how do we know that we've solved it? And if it turns out that communication is one of those things, then that becomes one of the measures.
So could an example be one of our products is mitigating risk, right? At Allianz, right? Allianz Trade. And we have products that help people insure against risk, financial risk. So, for example, extending credit lines, extending credit to customers, and they get so large in the millions that there's a big risk if customers pay late. Or so one of your products potentially could be some insurance, some factoring, if you like. I may be oversimplifying it. So if that's the case, would and so given the nature of the economy today, with tariffs going whiplash all over the place, and people being uncertain in many areas, are you constantly innovating new products, new ways of going to market with what you have, or is it pretty static? In other words, what's the volume of change? And I'm guessing if it's high, then there's probably a big demand for Agile in that sense.
I'm hearing two separate questions in there,
Yeah,
because
they
the
are.
first
They're two
question is
separate
about,
questions.
yeah, the first question is really more business focused, where the other one is about change. And in
Right,
our world, honestly, change is happening all the time.
right.
So back to your question about communication, communicating and clearly communicating to our squads who are meant to be bringing in new business and renewing business with our customers, that becomes really important, that there is regular interaction and regular understanding of everyone. So in the traditional sense, something might come through within our risk area that all of our analysts need to be aware of, or all of our underwriters need to be aware of. And that comes through what we would call a chapter, right? And so all that information comes through the chapter, which holds all of those analysts and underwriters. But then they go to their squad and they act as the communication tool for that important thing that they bring it to their squad. So it ends up moving faster, actually, in an Agile setup than that traditional cascade of communication, because we can, at that point, verify that the information was owned and understood because it was then relayed. Because it's very easy for me to then reach out to my squad leads and find out, did you learn about this?
I
It's a
love
simple,
that.
it's a simple yes, no at that point.
Yeah, because I was going to ask you before when you said team and the different, so I'm calling it a cross-functional team. They're representing each function, and each function could be many people, right? I know I just froze, but hopefully you can still hear me.
I
Uh,
can.
okay, so we got the sort of how and the why a little bit. Tell us something else that you're excited about Agile. Tell us something else you'd like us to know, because I know you use other terms and you get very excited about other things like culture, et cetera. What else?
Right.
What else excites you about what you do there?
Anyone who knows me knows I get pretty excited about new things. And this is a newer approach for us within my region in Allianz Trade, but not new to the company as a whole. And we have seen year over year in other areas of our business that moving towards these agile squads has improved time to close. It has improved renewals and renewals within the time spans that we look at. It has improved, the interaction that these teams have, overall learning, the development of our employees. They know more about our total process, which then makes us more valuable to the customers in that area. So I've seen that. I've seen that transition, and I've seen those numbers, and I get excited at the opportunity of that, within my own region and bringing that to my own region. That's what I look forward to from a business perspective. But personally, I love that there's always something else to learn. I teach Agile with my employees within my region. Well, they're not my employees, with the employees in the region. I teach it, and I find that every month when I'm teaching this class, something else becomes apparent to me. Something else becomes new. And I notice that in ceremonies, and I notice that in retrospectives. Each time we're there, the employees who are part of a squad, they learn something new that's more valuable to them moving forward. So the learning opportunities, again, really, really excite me, but that brings me back to my value, my core value. So it is really exciting to see this type of behavior really benefit the employees that I work with.
Yeah, that's very clear. So as we wrap up, because as usual, every time I talk to you, it's like time vanishes. Um,
Goes so fast.
It really does. Uh, but tell us a little bit about things that inspire you, like people you follow, books you've read, podcasts, anything that, you know, sometimes you know a person by who they follow. So do you have any suggestions for people on stuff that you found useful that maybe they would also find useful?
Oh, sure. You know, Within the Agile world, I'll say that the Agile coaching book that is written by Lyssa Adkins, who is the founder of Agile Coaching, is a book that I carry around with me like a school textbook. It is highlighted. It has sticky notes in it. It has all kinds of things. I reread it pretty often to stay on top of the basics of Agile, so that I can see what's happening, within my day to day that I do. So in the Agile space, I definitely recommend that. Within the business realm, because I find that I don't have as much time as I really would like to dig into current events and understand things that are happening on the business side of the world. There is a daily newsletter that I get called the Morning Brew. That is one of my favorite things to read. It is in fact the very first thing that I read when I turn my Outlook on, that I'm drinking coffee and catching up on that. And Morning Brew they celebrated their 10-year anniversary, and I got to read their history last week, which was pretty interesting to me. But they also then tripped me into another podcast that I really enjoy called Money with Katie, which
Okay.
is again kind of bringing together what's happening in the world. and finances, and pulling those things together. And I find that those three things really bring my entire world together.
Well, thank you. One thing I admire about you, and we did this on purpose, we said we're not going to rehearse, we're not going to stage, we're not going to make the lighting and the microphones and the sound perfect, is how willing you are to be agile in a way, like on your feet, like really just roll with the punches. You didn't even know what questions I was going to ask you. I didn't even know what questions I was going to ask you, but this was very
That
helpful.
happens. That happens often, Charles, because especially when I'm in a class and I'm teaching Agile, the one thing I ask for is challenge me.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people really can't see the benefits right away. It does have to be a practice where you can learn over time. And at first, people are very skeptical. And so in those kinds of areas, I say, challenge me. I am ready to help people understand this world of Agile. So happy to continue this conversation with you in our interactions, but also so grateful that you even wanted to bring me into your podcast. So thanks so much.
You're very welcome. Thanks for listening to Enabling Buying in a World of Selling. Real talk with people who are really interested in this concept. Again, as a reminder, please go to enablingbuying.com where you can listen to some sample chapters from my book. And if you're interested, you can pre-order a copy for yourself. Looking forward to seeing you soon. And in the meantime, please enable good things.